So as you can see, I think this is going to be a feisty one.
I just can't see me ever stopping buying property. I just can't. It's like an addiction. We were very clear that we wanted between 3 to 4 hotels in Edinburgh. We know the locations in Edinburgh, we want them.
Average returns with the S&P 500, around about 8% averagely. Some years it obviously does more than that. Some years it might do 25%.
I can't see it, I can't feel it, I can't touch it. I just don't know who's managing it and can we trust them? Wow, I like that vision that he's got. Well, once you get to the 80k a month, then it's like, well, let's get to 100k a month, right? Let's get to 120k a month. Let's get to 150k a month. And of course...
Hi, and welcome to This Property Life, the podcast brought to you by Property Wealth System. At This Property Life, we try and give you insights into the real world of property investors, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Warts and all, we bring you stories and interviews with people in property that can help and inspire our listeners to either get started or to keep going amongst all the noise that's out there. I'm Nick Claydon, and today I'm joined by my partner in life and all things property related, Caroline Claydon. And we're going to discuss today a subject of great debate within our household, which is, what is our property endgame? And when I say great debate, I'm saying that very loosely because mainly it's an argument, but let's see how we go. So what is our property end game? Firstly, I think, firstly, welcome, Caroline.
Thanks.
Oh.
I'm just laughing at you saying great debate because our poor listeners are like listening in and hearing basically our marriage debates and conflicts on a regular basis, which I'm sure causes them great amusement.
Well, and this is I think this could be an interesting one. So, what is our property end game, and what do we mean by that? So, I think, firstly, what do I mean by that? I said it might be different. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is what is it all about? What are we trying to achieve? By when? And what for? Okay, so we're pretty busy at the moment. I think you'd agree. We've got
yes.
The hotel Stafford Street opened December. That's been like mega busy during the summer. We're about to start developing the next one, and we're constantly, when I say we, you're constantly finding stuff for us to view, which I'm panicking about every time we go and view it.
I've got heads of terms out on another 2.
Yeah, so we're pretty busy. So for me, it's about, not getting any younger, and at some point, probably want to stop. And so what does that look like? What does that mean? And how do we kind of extricate ourselves from the day-to-day? I think that's what I mean by property endgame. What do you think about property endgame?
I really struggle with this one because I massively buy into the vision of why we're doing this. I actually don't feel that we are massively sucked in the day-to-day as much as we used to be. And I'm quite happy doing this forever. I can't honestly see me ever hanging up my property boots and going, that's it, light my cigarette and go, we're done. I just can't see me ever stopping buying property. I just can't. It's like an addiction. There's a problem. I've got a problem. And every little property is like another little tens of thousands of pounds per month into the cash flow. And that's the bit that gets me excited. Yes, there's pressure points along the way, but well, diamonds are put under pressure to be created. So I don't know.
Pressure points.
Pressure. Yeah. Pressure. I'm going to say pressure points, challenges.
Like waiting a year for planning on a simple planning application.
Look, I think as property investors, your pressure points are always, you're planning, the lending, constantly changing their criteria, surveyors, downvaluing you or not giving you what you want, lawyers taking too long, but that's just business. And I know, talk about the end point being selling up everything, banking a shizzle load of cash, and then just living off the fund. And I get why that's attractive to you, but it just doesn't float my boat. And you really are going to have to work hard at convincing me. And then maybe our listeners can get some inspo about what their end game is from that. I think I work very well with numbers per month that I want us to generate. And then I link that with what that number per month means for my life, i.e., what can I spend it on? How expensive holidays can we go on, and what can I shop? And materialistic little goals. I mean, I don't think we're massively materialistic. However, we were at a wine tasting last night at the Rolls-Royce garage, and we were walking along in amongst those Rolls-Royce cars. And I think if you could just stroll on in and pick whatever car you wanted whenever, then the thrill of getting that car would wane. If you are loving what you're hearing on this Property Life podcast, you can join us for a free training that will give you a 7-step process, a roadmap on how to start and scale a property investment business. The 7th step of the process is the most surprising of all. It really shakes people when they learn that 7th and final step. You will also get some live case studies of deals our students are working on right now for training that's worth over £1,000. You can access that free by clicking the link in the show notes to access that 1 hour of content today. And we've always set ourselves goals, be it a particular watch. You've got your Rolex, your Patek Philippe thing going on. I love my shiny stones and jewelry. So if you set yourself a little vision of, I'm going to get that watch, I'm going to get that bracelet, I'm going to get, and then you work towards it and you get it, you feel that sense of achievement. I think if we just have a load of cash coming in and we can buy whatever we want when we want, I don't think the thrill would be there. But
I agree with that. It's like, when you can just go and buy anything you want whenever you want, it kind of loses its appeal, really, I think. Yeah. But, we're not at that point.
Yeah, but it's relative, right? It's relative, because at the same time, we can go clothes shopping and not look at the price tag of the clothes, right? Where there's people who are budgeting on.
And yeah, what's your first question? Whenever a package arrives for me, what's your first question?
What have you been buying now?
And how much is that?
I always ask you how much it was, of course. But if I go into a clothes shop, I'm not thinking, oh, that's too expensive or anything like that. But, when we started years and years ago, we would be really mindful about what we were spending on our food shop, for example. We do not have a food budget that we stick to for our shopping, for example. Basically.
You didn't tell me not to go to Waitrose.
That's because you're going every second day and then just leaving bags of Waitrose salad in the fridge to just rot. And I'm like, if you're going to just let salad rot, make sure it's the little salad that rots rather than a Waitrose one. That's the point I was making.
Fair point. So as you can see, I think this is going to be a feisty one. I'm just going to put a different angle on it and just go through kind of my thoughts on Endgame. I'm not saying this is the Endgame, but just like an alternative view on it. Because, I love property and I love buying property. I do see the properties, I look at our Birmingham HMOs and they're my little babies. That was, ones that I put a lot of work into, and, it was where I went to university. So I feel quite emotionally attached. So that would be a wrench to sell any of those for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting that is what we do, but I think it's just worth looking at an alternative view to just constantly buying and constantly going, because, whilst at this moment in time, we're not looking to cash in and go sit on a beach for the rest of our lives. It's, maybe at some point we might think, I want to get involved in another development. I'm not sure. I'm already at that point because I'm so utterly
done with
beat
builders,
down
done
by
with
the planning process.
Yeah.
It is just, is grueling. So there are elements to me where I think, well, if we could make, good investment returns without that, and we've kind of, built up a portfolio, then maybe we've cashed that in, and we're investing in other asset classes that, are truly passive, then, that has some element of appeal, I think. And I think it's worth looking at an alternative view rather than just endlessly buying just because we like doing that.
I know.
Also thinking about, handing things down to our boys. Maybe they're not into it.
That's the next angle, right? So an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, we've got at least another, let's say, 10 years before they make a decision on if they're into it or not. They're making sounds that they're interested in it because we're teaching them the power and value of money and what that can do for you and do for the choices that they might have, for example. But they're too young to know what they want in their lives. And I quite like the idea of having that family run business and them getting involved and then them taking on projects that, you know, maybe we wouldn't be interested in or going off in a different direction, but with property. I quite like that idea, but that's a me thing, not a they thing. So I think we need to keep a nice open mind. I would hate for us to sell up, be living off cash that's sat in a fund and, you know, living 6 months of the year in the sun and 6 months of the year, you know, here at home with no real purpose. I would really struggle with that.
Well, there'd be a purpose, definitely.
What would be the purpose?
Sitting on the beach, getting a nice tan. No?
My brain is not wired that way, because whenever we go on holiday, whenever I see sunshine and a sun lounger, that is when my brain kicks into creative gear of how to make more money.
I know, but then you stress me out because you're sitting there with your laptop and I'm like trying to chill out, and corner of my eye I can just see, like, you know, on your laptop, and it puts me all on edge. But anyway, that's another episode.
Hatching another plan of, I'm just constantly thinking of new businesses, new ventures. I want to constantly learn. You know, I love the idea of maybe having a product that I could sell and just have as an e-commerce business as well. So you know, there's so many opportunities out there. I could not just switch off. I couldn't just do nothing.
Yeah,
you are lazy and you would be quite happy sitting in your pants doing nothing, reading the newspaper.
For a bit. But no, you know, I can never see, like, you know, just not doing anything. But, you know, is there a way that we can both have the same thing? It's just, is there an alternative to just to constantly, let's keep buying, let's keep developing properties, let's keep doing the stressful things, you know, as we approach I'm going to say second half of our lives.
Oh God.
I say second half.
But okay, so I'm going to throw something into the mix. So we could stop buying in the way that we buy right now. So we could move away from our methodology of buying below market value or at market price to then add the value to then, you know, rent out for income. We could take our capital and buy assets that already generate income and not try and refinance, pull our money out to go again, and actually do that element of investing, what I would call the amateur type of investing, where you're just investing for the sake of return on your cash rather than that whole recycling and going again and going again. That might work. That'd be a lazy, more chilled way of doing it.
Yeah, it would kind of be the same thing in principle as to what I would be talking about, which would be, you know, getting lump sum of money and putting it into a fund. And maybe if I go into what that Endgame is and just paint that picture.
Oh, okay. But the fund, this whole fund, to me, I can't see it, I can't feel it, I can't touch it. I just don't know who's managing it and can we trust them? There's my Scottish nature coming out. Can we trust it?
Right. Okay. So look, my potential one of Endgame scenarios that I'll be thinking about would be something I got from this book here. You know how I love a book.
For the listeners, it's called Financial Freedom, The Proven Path to All the Money You Will Ever Need by Grant Sabatier. How do you say that?
Sabatier.
Okay.
Grant Sabatier. Okay, Financial Freedom. Grant Sabatier. Okay. This is a guy who wrote, his first book was called Millennial Money. Now, I can't claim to be a millennial. I'll give you that one. But it was still useful, I thought. And it gave a good few concepts. But this one took it a little bit further. And this is not a real estate guy, although he does kind of mention real estate as an investment vehicle to get you where you want to go, which is where, you know, I kind of picked it up from. But essentially what this book says is if you can build up your income streams and add other income streams, you basically collect a big pot of cash you work out what your number is, right? You work out what your number is. And by that, I mean, you work out what it is that you need to earn annually to have the lifestyle that you want. Okay, so you've got to work that number out. So let's say, for example, your number was, I need my calculator here. Let's say your number was, okay, I want £250,000 a year. That'll give me an amazing retirement, good lifestyle. You know, your number is whatever it is. It's, you know, that's up to you. So let's use that as an example. Okay, so let's say you had your number £250,000 a year in income. Okay, so what he says is you take that number, 250,000, okay, and you multiply that by 25. And I'll tell you why shortly, right? So you take that number, it's 25 times your annual, okay, and that gives you a figure of 6,250,000. So that is your target pot of money. Okay. What you then do, you employ all these other strategies to build that pot of money. So, for example, for us, it is having multiple income streams. So, you know, building up our buy-to-lets into HMOs and on into hotels. Okay. At some point, let's say we could sell a chunk of property that we've built up. You know, we've got hotels that are now commercial, you know, commercial properties that will value at a high level based on the income that they produce, cash them in, banks £6,250,000 cash. Okay. You then take that money and you just go and invest it in something very straightforward like the S&P 500. Okay. So the S&P 500, if anyone's not sure what that is an index of the top 500 companies in America.
Join us for our 3-day property intensive workshop. This is world renowned. This is the program I took global for Rich Dad Education and Robert Kiyosaki. This 3-day intensive workshop will go through a step-by-step process on how you are going to choose the correct strategy for your life, your circumstances. We'll go through the pros and cons of each of these strategies, and then we'll show you how to actually pinpoint your investment area, how to find the deals in that investment area, as well as how to do the deal analysis. That deal analysis saves you from making any expensive mistakes in the property market. We'll show you how to raise the money. There are more than 40 different ways of raising money to structure your deals in a creative way. We'll show you how to make lump sums of cash, as well as residual monthly income. We'll also look deep into the whole psychology and how you can use debt to create generational wealth. We'll go into multi-million pound transactions as well as the little baby buy-to-lets at the start. And we'll show you how to actually create that wealth plan for the future so that your generations to come can benefit from the work you put in today. When you secure your ticket to the next 3-day intensive property workshop, you will also qualify for our bonus material. We have a learning platform with over 20 videos and downloadable documents to get you started and prepared for attending the workshop. In those videos, whenever they're updated, you will get access to that content. We will also make sure on the workshop that you get a one-to-one consultation with a property investor so that you can have a bespoke strategy specific to your life so that you can hit the ground running after the workshop. We don't want you to attend a course after course after course. We want you to get results now. To secure your place in our world-renowned 5-star rated sellout property workshop, click the link in the show notes to secure your spot now. Spaces fill up quickly, so don't delay.
Okay, so constantly as companies, enter the index because they're the top 500 in terms of earnings, they'll come in and drop out. So it's basically a snapshot of the top 500 performing companies in America at any one time. Okay, so there's no fund managers involved. You're not handing your money over to a fund manager that could, mess it all up and you've lost everything. You're not handing it to Bernie Madoff or whatever. If anyone's not sure what I'm talking about, go and Google the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time and you'll know what I'm talking about. So you simply put it in an index fund. Okay, so that is a fund that tracks the S&P 500. Now, average returns of the S&P 500, around about 8% averagely. Some years it obviously does more than that. Some years it might do 25%. Other years there might be a correction in the market and it might do negative 20% or whatever. Okay, but over time, the average is around about 8%. And what you're looking for in investment is that long-term investment, that average. Okay, because you're not dipping in and out of the market, you're just putting it there and you're leaving it. You're not touching it, you're leaving it alone. Okay, and that is your fund that is going to build. So that 8%, you invested 8%. Okay, so you've got your 6,250,000 in your pot. Yeah. You invested at averagely 8%. That gives you an annual figure of £500,000. Okay, but you don't want to just live off that. Okay, that isn't the target, because you want that fund to keep growing.
Yep.
Yeah, because if you take all of the money out, it will just forever sit at that level and effectively will erode, because inflation will erode it over time. And we want something that you can keep building so it can hand down the generations. So you basically only take out 4% of that fund and you leave the other 4% invested. So each year your fund rises by 250,000 and you take out 250,000, and that is your annual figure that you wanted, that you then live off, which is, you know, whatever it is, 20 grand a month. Okay.
And
so tax depends on everybody else, on whatever your situation is at the time, you know, where that fund is invested and where you're based and all those things. So I'm not going to go into tax, but obviously, yes, you're going to have to factor in tax into that equation. Yeah. I just wanted to really focus on the premise and what it is. So you've got to work out what is your number. Okay, that's the big thing that you need to work out. You need to project forward in your mind about what is it you want to live on. And this is where you kind of bring pensions into play and you think about, well, what are we taught? Right? What is the wider public think about retirement? You know, how much money do you think you need in retirement? And I think most people, there's probably going a slight tangent, but I think it's relevant. I think most people drastically, fundamentally, don't understand how much money they're going to need.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because pension advisors are like, well, you'll have paid off your mortgage, the kids will have left home, your expenses will be smaller, and yada yada yada. And they're like, suddenly you have this little granny that's having to put blankets over her legs to keep warm in the winter because, you know, yeah, she's living in a property that's got no mortgage on it, but she can't afford to bloom and heat it. It's like,
yeah, and essentially most pensions aren't really going to give you what you want. You know, what is your time? If you're a decent earner, let's say you're earning 150 grand a year, 200 grand a year, or something like that. If you haven't worked this out, when you stop working, that's gone. That lifestyle is gone. Even if you paid your house off, whatever, you know, and people are living longer. You know, our generation, average age is, you know, is going to be a lot higher. Our kids' generation, they're going to live, you know, it's going to be normal to get to 100, like average. So people are living longer and working longer. But, you know, at some point, if you want to stop, you need a pot of money. And that pot of money needs to be enough to give you an aspiration, you know, an aspirational lifestyle, not just a lifestyle in poverty. Because, you know, if your pension is going to give you 25 grand a year, that's, you know, potentially you might be doing that for 30 years on that money. That's not living the dream, is it?
No.
You know, so that's why I think a lot of the wider public don't really get it. It's like, you know, we work hard, and if what we teach is about, you know, living the life that you want to live, and pensions just aren't going to do it unless you've got a decent pot of money.
Well, I mean, I did a bit of research on how much you would need in a pension pot to give you the kind of pension that would sustain a half decent, and I mean half decent, not something really flashy, but a kind of average or slightly above average income. And the kind of pot you'd need in your pension exceeds 3 million quid easily.
And that's just for pretty average.
That's just for average, right? So for people who are maybe putting their 200 to 300 quid a month into their pension, they're nowhere near. They're so far away from where they're going to need to be. And that's why you're seeing people in Homebase and Sainsbury's and Tesco's in their 60s, 70s, and in some cases 80s working on checkouts, because the pension just isn't enough to actually keep warm and put food on the table, which is an absolute scandal, frankly. And you talked about the biggest Ponzi scheme going. Actually, the government here in the UK is running the biggest Ponzi scheme. They need our millennials to be paying into a pension to pay for the guys that are pulling the pension right now. And they're just not doing it because they don't, well, psychologically, they're not seeing the benefit of doing that right here, right now. And they'd rather spend that money on something else. But also that number just seems so big that it's like, what's the point in trying? I mean, when you were just talking about the example of how that book talked about creating financial freedom and needing a pot of 6 million quid, I bet you half our listeners just switched off. Getting a pot of 6 million quid, like, what the hell? How realistic is that in order to have a decent retirement later on in life? You loved that book, and it was very, very detailed on the percentage of savings that you could make in order to then build that little pot up. And I did read it and I struggled with it because it was all about sacrificing now for the greater good in the future. And while I get that, he was so drastic with it. Well, he would, for example, he was talking about when he goes into the supermarket and he's choosing between the home branded item, let's say tomato ketchup, home brand, and the Heinz. Although he massively prefers the Heinz, he literally calculated the percentage difference in price, and then he extrapolated that out over his life of tomato ketchup, and then he worked out what he would save in his pot by buying the home brand as opposed to the Heinz. Now that's mental mindset.
Yeah, it's extreme, right? So yeah, it's interesting, right? I found that really interesting. Because it kind of, puts out, if you go to, in the morning, you go to Pret and get your coffee, or you could go to McDonald's and get your coffee, and it's like £2.50 difference or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how he extrapolates that out and says, right, that you're trading time. You're trading your time for that £2.50.
Yeah.
Right. How much time are you trading for that? Because that's more time you've got to work to fill your pot. So it's a really interesting concept, because sometimes you're going to go, well, right now in this moment in time, it's worth it. I want the Pret coffee, right? But other times you might just think, well, actually, it's just kind of habit. And if I got used to the cheaper coffee, you get it. And some people get it, some don't. But I like the concept of it. And it's not like we do that.
No.
Even though you don't allow me to go to Waitrose, I do sometimes go.
I think if either of us, if we were to be sat down on who is the most wasteful with money, it is 100% you.
See, I would say exact opposite. Because you don't register. It's like how many. If you look at I gauge it on how many Amazon deliveries do we get a day and how many are for me.
Hang on.
I'd say about less than 10%.
I'm buying them for the kids. I've got to buy blooming mouth guards and shin guards and socks and all sorts for the boys. So it's not all for me and the dogs. So I'm buying for 5. You're buying for 1.
Okay. Let's move on. But yeah, look, the point of this book, right, is to say, look, okay, if people listening gave £6 million, that sounds like completely outrageous. To be fair, 10 years ago, that would have been outrageous for us.
Yeah.
Right? So it is a question of thinking about and going back to the vision. Now, most people that follow this podcast or follow us have been on any of our courses or trainings. They are aspirational. Okay, they want more. That's why they're listening. That's why they're doing training and thinking about property, because at some point, that realization has hit of, I don't want to keep doing what I'm doing forever unless there's a decent payoff at the end.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is, look, there's more than one way to have that payoff. Yeah. So if you've just got that plan in your head about where you're trying to get to, it's about having the thought of the end point now, on whatever age you're at, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or whatever we are, you got to have that. You got to think about, okay, where am I trying to get to? What am I trying to do? Anyone that knows me and listens to anything that I've done knows I go on about vision all the time.
Yeah.
The reason is it's so important.
It is important.
So this is where this comes in.
But I think you made a valid point there where you talked, just on this one episode once, about how 6 million quid in a pot 10 years ago would have just seemed like pie in the sky to us. And just to be clear, the 6 million pot, that's not our number. our numbers much, much, much bigger than that. But when we first started investing in property, it was, okay, a 2-year vision. We have to create 3 grand a month to financially be okay and survive, right? That wasn't our dream life number. It was our, what do we need to keep the wolves from the doors, to put food on the table, and to survive and be self-sufficient. That was 3 grand a month. Now we created that in 12 months after starting. And then you then change the end game, of course, right? Because the end game at that point is 3 grand, and all you were focused on is 3 grand. And then we get to the 3 grand, it's like, right, now how much for a little more breathing space? Well, if we can create 3 grand a month in 12 months, well, let's just do that again. Let's create another 3 grand a month in the next 12 months. Right, let's do that. Right, done. And then the end game just shifts and shifts and shifts and shifts. I remember years ago, it must be about 12 years ago, I looked over the shoulder of a guy who was working on his laptop, and he had a little post-it note on his laptop that said £80,000. And it was just like circled. And I said, oh, what's that? And he said, that's what I want to make every single month. And then that's £1,000,000 a year coming in, or something like that. But it was like, he was clear. It was like this £83,000 a month, £83,000 a month. He wanted to make that every single month passively. And then he'll be making his £1,000,000 a year or whatever. Right. And I remember thinking at the time, wow, I like that vision that he's got.
Yeah.
And we were nowhere near, obviously, that, because we were at the 3,000 a month stage. But as you evolve over the years, your end goal, your vision just shifts and it changes, so that, well, once you get to the 80K a month, then it's like, well, let's get to 100K a month, right? Let's get to 120K a month. Let's get to 150K a month. And of course, your lifestyle adjusts with you as well. Things that you experience as a one-off become then more regular, or you start giving back, and the end game of why you're doing it shifts slightly. It's all part of experiencing and growing and developing and learning as you go. But I don't think anyone should be embarrassed about, putting a number on it per month or per year, and then shifting that and keep shifting it. And it's not because, we're capitalist, materialistic people. It's because actually you want to experience things in life that you maybe haven't ever had the opportunity to experience before.
Yeah, no, I think that's valid. But I think, I think having a stepping stone goals is really important. But I think you got to have an end number. Otherwise,
we did not have an end number then, though. You're saying stepping stone goal, like the 3 grand a month was absolutely the be all and end all. And I remember at one point we were set on holiday, and it was like, God, imagine if we made 10 grand a month. Oh my God, like that blew our heads.
Yeah. No,
and then you get to that point, and then you're like, right, let's double it. And then
that's when we were younger. As I said, my argument is just like when we get to this age where we have achieved a certain level, right, and we, and the bigger numbers are now there, and we can see they are achievable. So think, if we now want to stop, and maybe if you're in your 30s or 20s, you don't need that right then. And some of you might, and think, well, I've got a number in my head that's going to give me this, and I'm happy with that. And we hadn't had that up until probably relatively recently. But now I'd say I think about that a lot more now and think, well, look, realistically, at some point, I'm not going to really want to get involved in doing really full-on developments. I don't actually particularly enjoy that side of it. I know you enjoy that more. I much prefer, the operations side of the business, and look at the numbers and the money coming in. So I'm kind of more of a looking at numbers on a spreadsheet. I like that part of it. Yeah. So if I could have the numbers on the spreadsheet without the pain of the development, I would take that. I think I would at this stage. So that's the only what I'm saying is, at some point, I think you've got to think about, okay, well, look, we've locked in a certain level of lifestyle that I'm happy with, right? Or you might be thinking, well, look, I'm almost there, but to get the lifestyle I really want, I need more. Okay, so what is that number? Work that out. Have your vision, make it real, work out the number that costs, and you factor everything in. What holidays you want to go on? What, how do you spend life? Are you spending 6 months in the sun does that mean you're buying a house? I mean, what does that mean? What does it all look like? Yeah. And then work out your number. Take your number, annualize it, multiply by 25. That's the target.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and then it's up to you to make that happen. So we can, so we knew to get to those kind of numbers, buy-to-lets weren't going to do it. So, you got to start scaling. So that's scaling up into HMOs, and that wasn't going to do it. You need to scale up into commercial, find the type of commercial property that's going to give the bigger numbers, and get stuck in and do it. And once we're there now, you can be thinking, well, how many more do we need to have the option, let's say, of cashing it in, banking the number, investing in the S&P, and going and spending 6 months being not in Scotland.
Rude. Well, I think we'll just swap our 6 months. You can be in the sun and I'll be in Scotland, and then we'll swap.
Well, I just do the 12 months.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah. I just don't have that end game in our heads. Each project, well, is taking us to a certain point, and then I've always got my eye on the next project. And I do think, okay, what we're doing right now, we were very clear that we wanted between 3 to 4 hotels in Edinburgh. We know the locations in Edinburgh, we want them. And I know that after that, we'll have been done with that strategy. We'll be well and truly done with it. And I want to move into a more heart project like assisted living and building for assisted living and getting far more involved in, God help me, the councils and giving back to communities just because I can. And that would be interesting, and I'd learn more. And I don't want to have all our eggs in hotel basket. That's not sensible. It's for us.
They're not passive. It's not passive income. It takes a lot of work. Whilst income is great, it's not passive.
Also remember that at each stage that we get to, we're Stafford Street was that real challenge hump in the road. And actually, John's Place, okay, yes, we've got some planning nonsense that we've got to get through. But actually, John's Place will be more straightforward. And then once you're in with the lenders, all the lending is starting to get easier. And actually, the churn and burn of that is going to be very similar to doing your buy-to-let and your HMO developments. It just will, because you sometimes have that horrible no man's land in property where getting the first one. So if you guys are listening and you still don't have that first buy-to-let, that first one seems so tricky, and you're going to maybe make mistakes or have offers turned down, or a builder rocks out of you halfway through the job, or you overspend on the refurb, or whatever. All of these things, it's like a rite of passage. You have to kind of do it. And then once you have that economy of scale of your third one, your fourth one, you're like, this is a lot easier. This is better. And the banks take you more seriously because now you're an experienced landlord and yada, yada. So at every level, I just want to be, and this could be ego driven, who knows, but I want to be in a place where doing a commercial deal, particularly here in Scotland, it becomes second nature to me. That is not tricky. I'm not having to, feel like I'm spinning lots of plates. I think we're there, like, all the viewings that we're on, the heads of terms that we're putting together for the, the next 2, 3, 4 projects, they're in the offering because of what we've done with Stafford Street and John's Place. So we're literally, the momentum's in motion, and we just then need to have a plan, I think, for what after hotels. You're not there with your mindset on that, whereas my head is.
I think by the time we've done 4, I don't think about it in terms of numbers really. I just look at the income. If I hear numbers 4, I think, well, that's just 4 times what the income is on the Stafford Street. I look at that number and go, yeah, I'm happy with that. And then I look at back to our vision and go, well, what else do we need here? Is our vision changing?
Remember to click the link in the show notes for you to access a free online 1-hour training special that's worth over £1,000 to start and scale your property business today. Click the link in the show notes to watch.
In which case, we need to decide, does that mean our vision is going to change? So therefore we need to do more. I'm just sort of the view of, if your vision is what it is and your lifestyle is, and you've achieved that level of lifestyle, for me, it would be about, the next stage would be have that lifestyle without all the stress. Right?
You're only stressed because there's so many moving parts in our business. Like we've got like 8
Yeah,
companies, right?
but
9
also,
companies. Like that's a
it,
lot of,
but it's not just that as well. It's the fact that, okay, look, 10 years time, let's say our boys are off and they decide to, go and live in Australia.
they
Okay,
will
could happen.
not
Could
over my
happen.
dead body.
I'll be encouraging them. Um, but and then it might be, well, look, actually, we might want that level of freedom and flexibility where we go and decamp to Australia for 6 months of the year and spend some
Yeah.
time with them, or do you know what I mean? So if we're knee deep in new developments and things in 10 years' time, I'm gonna be thinking, why? Because we've
Yeah. No,
kind of
you're,
achieved a number.
yeah,
So
no, you're right. You are right. Look, this is down to, I guess, also different personality types. Because as I've said, Nick is really lazy and I'm not. So I have an
apart from
ADHD
when I was,
brain.
up and down the M6 twice every week for about 10 years, apart from that, yeah.
Yeah, I know, but my ADHD brain will just not switch off. It just will not, it will not stop. It's like the Terminator. It will not give up. It will not stop.
Relentless.
Yeah, relentless.
Can't be
So,
bargained with.
yes.
Look,
Anyway,
I think where we're getting to is probably, look, the lifestyle is the important thing, the vision, right?
yeah.
Um, the end game is up for discussion, I think.
Mm, mm,
You guys might be really clear on your end game, that's fine. We're not quite there. But I think the most important thing is we do know where we are in terms of lifestyle that we want.
yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, we're
And the
absolutely on the
income
same
that's
page
needed.
as that.
Yeah. And the income that's needed for that. It's
Yeah.
just how's that achieved? And maybe some kind of hybrid end game where,
Compromise end game.
yeah, where we cash in some and build a fund. And so we have both types of like truly passive income from a fund, but we still got a fund. And then we have another fund that maybe does property, and you can tick your boxes of the, you know,
Yeah.
social
I'll,
housing stuff.
I'm going to share a very funny, very quick story to finish off, where when Nick and I were first putting our vision together about what life we were to have, and this is before we had the boys, and it was right down to the detail of where I wanted to live, what car I wanted to drive, what school my kids were going to go to, what kind of dog I was going to get. Like I was in a lot of detail. One of the items on my vision was to have a holiday home in the Scottish Highlands. And I had in my mind, it had mountains, it had lochs, it had water, it was remote, it was beautiful and idyllic and peaceful. And Nick came along and went, no bloody way. Are we having another property in Scotland? It's too bloody cold. We'll be having a property in Spain. And it caused massive ructions because I was like, you can't piss all over my vision. You can have your place in Spain and I will have my place in the Highlands. So we've agreed now we're having both, right?
So the lifestyle number just went up a significant amount.
Yeah. But you know what? While I'm really all about that idyllic, I mean, I literally can see it and I can feel how I'll feel when I've got that log burning fire looking out onto the rolling hills and the water in the Highlands.
Looking out into the driving rain.
Yeah. I'm just like, how often am I actually going to go there? It needs to be realistically about an hour and a half away from Edinburgh. So it's not really that Highlands. And my kids are doing so many sports at the weekends. I'll never get there at the weekends. So actually, it's my kids inadvertently that are just destroying that vision for me. But hey, one day maybe I'll just retire with my fund up into the Highlands away from all civilization.
Well, you can come and join me in my villa in Spain.
All right, there we are. Good. Right, is that
Right.
it?
I think that's it. So we agree to disagree. But
Absolutely.
we are still working towards the same
Yeah.
end point. I think it's just how that is finally achieved. But I think it's just an interesting take on it. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, go and grab this book. I really liked it. It's not property related, apart from a little bit, which is one of the asset classes to build your fund. But it's a bit of an eye opener, I thought, into really pinning down your vision and your end point, where you're trying to get to, and what's that look like when you get there.
Yeah. And it's
Okay,
okay
so what's coming up?
It's all right for the end game to shift and change.
Yeah, it can
as
definitely
you
change. Yeah,
evolve.
absolutely.
That's okay. That's fine. What's coming up? Well, we need to do another book review, although you've inadvertently kind of reviewed a book today, which wasn't the plan. So you went off piste with that. We thought about doing an episode where we both bring our top 3 books and then have a book off. we are getting feedback that people are loving the conflict between us. So, well, there's plenty more of that to come.
We've not even scratched the surface on that one.
We're being so polite to each other. There's no swearing yet.
This is the most polite you ever are to me when we're on this.
I know. This is why he loves doing podcasts. Like, yeah, let's go on a podcast and you'll actually speak to me. Please do let us know what topics you'd like us to cover on our episodes. We can get some special guests in to talk about certain topics. I was thinking about doing one about being a female in a very male-dominated industry. In fact, that wine tasting we were at last night, women were the minority. Again, it was all very, well, male. Let's just put it that way.
Middle-aged white men. Well, there were a few young ones, actually, to be fair.
Yeah. Well, property, you got the estate agents, you got the brokers, you got the lawyers, like male dominated, right? And then just go into the building world and then it's that even more. So we could go and explore that. But we have coming up lots of new exciting events. We have a networking event in Edinburgh on the 11th of October. That's the weekend that I'm doing a one-off workshop in Edinburgh at the Village Hotel, the 11th to the 13th. All our existing students are welcome to come and do a refresh and just hang out with us for the weekend. But for those of you that don't know who we are, you've never experienced us, that would be a great opportunity for you to come and get a Scottish perspective, particularly if you're based up here. We do talk about investing in England from being based in Scotland as well. We are in London in November 13th and 14th doing masterclasses, and I've got a keynote speech at a big event at the Excel in London. And we have one of our workshops near Heathrow in the first weekend of December as well. Is that enough? Have I talked?
That's enough. So if you want to find out more, come check us out at propertywealthsystem.co.uk. Yep. Do let us know how you're finding the podcast. If you've got some questions, anything you want us to answer, please do send those in. Give us a bit of feedback and like and subscribe as well on YouTube. And we will see you very soon.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.